In 1790, the United States was 14 years old, and it was already dying. Not from British armies, not from invasion, from debt. The new nation owed roughly $79 million, an almost unimaginable sum for a country with barely any economy, no reliable tax system, and no credit anywhere in the world. Its currency was nearly worthless. Foreign lenders wouldn't touch it. The states were fighting each other over money, and some were quietly wondering whether this whole American experiment was worth continuing at all. The Revolution had won the war. But winning a war and building a country are two completely different things, and America was failing at the second one. Then, over a single private dinner, three men made a deal. A financial arrangement so consequential that it decided the shape of the United States for the next 200 years, including where its capital city would be built. Here's what the textbooks don't emphasize. America wasn't truly created by a revolution. It was created by a debt deal. And in the next 8 minutes, I'll show you exactly how money, not muskets, built the most powerful country in modern history. To understand the deal, you have to understand how desperate the situation was. The Revolutionary War had been financed almost entirely on credit. The Continental Congress had no power to tax. It could only ask the states for money and hope they sent it. So to pay for the war, they borrowed. From France, from the Dutch, from their own citizens, in the form of IOUs handed to soldiers and suppliers who often never got paid. By 1790, that debt had piled into an enormous mountain. The federal government owed money abroad and at home. On top of that, the individual states had racked up their own war debts, and some were drowning in them, while others had largely paid theirs off. And here's the part that made it existential. A country that cannot pay its debts cannot borrow. A country that cannot borrow cannot fund an army, build infrastructure, or respond to a crisis. In the 18th century, credit was survival. Without it, the United States would remain a weak, fragmented collection of states that no one in Europe took seriously, ripe to be picked apart. The Revolution had created a nation on paper, but financially, it was a nation that couldn't pay its bills. And in the real world, that's not a country. It's a temporary arrangement waiting to collapse. But here's what almost nobody realizes. The man who solved this crisis didn't just want to pay off the debt. He wanted to use it. He had a plan so counterintuitive that it enraged half the country, because he understood something about debt that his enemies never did. The Secretary of the Treasury was Alexander Hamilton, and his proposal was, to many, outrageous. He argued that the federal government should assume, all the war debts of the individual states, folding them into one massive national debt. And then, crucially, it should pay that debt reliably, in full, forever. To his opponents, this sounded insane. Why would states that had already paid their debts agree to help pay off the debts of states that hadn't? Why would a struggling nation deliberately pile more obligations onto itself? Because Hamilton understood the thing they didn't. A national debt, properly managed, is not just a burden. It's a machine. Think about what it does. If the federal government assumes all the debt, then everyone who is owed money, wealthy merchants, bankers, investors, both domestic and foreign, is now financially invested in the survival of the federal government. If the country collapses, they lose everything. Suddenly, the most powerful economic interests in America have a direct, personal stake in making the Union work. And second, a nation that reliably pays its debts builds credit. Credit means it can borrow again, cheaply, quickly, at scale. That borrowing power is what lets a country fight wars, build canals, expand westward, and survive crises. Hamilton wasn't trying to eliminate debt. He was trying to build a credit engine that would let a poor country act like a rich one. Debt, handled correctly, wasn't the disease. It was going to be the cure and the foundation of American power. But it nearly didn't happen. And this is where it becomes political theater. The plan hit a wall. Southern states, particularly Virginia, had largely paid off their war debts. They saw assumption for exactly what it was in practice. Their taxpayers subsidizing the debts of northern states that had spent more freely. And they suspected, correctly, that this plan would massively strengthen the federal government at the expense of the states. there was also the matter of who profited. Many of the original IOUs from the war had been sold off by desperate soldiers and farmers for pennies on the dollar to speculators. If the government now paid those debts at full value, it would be enriching the speculators who'd bought them cheaply, not the veterans who'd earned them. To Hamilton's opponents, this was a plan to make wealthy financiers rich on the backs of ordinary people. The opposition, led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, blocked it. Repeatedly. Congress deadlocked. The plan failed vote after vote. And meanwhile, there was a second fight happening in parallel. An argument over where to permanently locate the nation's capital city. Northern and southern states each wanted it in their region, and that fight was going nowhere either. Two deadlocks. Two things each side desperately wanted, which is exactly the situation in which a deal becomes possible. And so, in June of 1790, three men sat down to a private dinner. What they agreed to over that table would decide not just America's finances, but the physical location of its capital and the balance of power for centuries. This is the trade that built a country. The dinner was hosted by Thomas Jefferson. Present were Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. The bargain that emerged was elegantly simple. Hamilton would get his assumption plan. The federal government would take on the state's war debts, building the credit engine he wanted. In exchange, the nation's permanent capital would be located in the South, on the Potomac River, the site that would become Washington, D.C. Each side traded away what it cared about less to secure what it cared about more. The Southern politicians accepted a stronger federal financial system in exchange for the permanent capital being placed in their region, bringing them proximity, influence, and prestige. Hamilton accepted giving up a northern capital in exchange for the financial architecture that would define the country. Both sides got what they came for, and the country got something neither side fully anticipated. Think about what actually happened here. The location of the capital city of the United States, the seat of its government for the next 2 centuries, was determined not by geography, not by ideology, not by principle. It was determined by a debt negotiation. Washington, D.C. exists where it does because of a financial trade. The Revolution won independence. But this dinner, this quiet exchange between 3 men over a table, is what turned a broke, fragile collection of states into a functioning nation with credit, a financial system, and a permanent capital. And the machine Hamilton built worked, almost immediately. By assuming the debt and committing to pay it, the United States established creditworthiness. Foreign lenders, who had been unwilling to touch American paper, began to trust it. The value of American debt rose. The country could borrow, and borrowing power is what a young nation uses to survive and grow. That credit engine is what allowed the United States to do everything that followed. To fund a government, to eventually buy enormous territories, expand across a continent, build infrastructure, and finance wars. A country that could borrow cheaply could act far bigger than its actual wealth allowed. Hamilton's system turned financial weakness into leverage, and the wealthy interests who now held federal debt became, exactly as he'd planned, permanent stakeholders in the survival of the Union. Their fortunes were tied to the country's existence. That alignment of money and nation is one of the quietest, most powerful forces in American history. Here's the lesson underneath all of it, and it's the one that carries into today. Wars decide who governs. Money decides what survives. The Revolution answered the question of who would rule America. But the debt deal answered a harder question: whether America could function at all. Nations aren't built on victories. They're built on credit, on financial architecture, on unglamorous deals made over dinner tables that history barely remembers. The soldiers won the war. The financiers built the country. $79 million in debt. 3 men. 1 dinner. America's capital city sits where it sits because of a financial trade. The Revolution made a nation possible. The deal made it real.